The opulent Southern California home should have been filled with the sounds of family. It was a Sunday morning, after all. Instead, it echoed with the chilling cries of a father who had just made a horrifying discovery.
My wife Suzanne, she's not breathing. Please send help.
Dr. Eric Scott Sills, a renowned fertility doctor, stood in his palatial home, his voice trembling as he called 911. His wife, Suzanne Sills, lay unresponsive at the bottom of the stairs. Their idyllic life had been shattered. The luxurious surroundings did little to soften the blow of the tragedy about to unfold. First responders rushed to the scene, their sirens piercing the quiet suburban morning. They found a scene that seemed all too familiar: a grieving husband, the lifeless body of his wife, and an initial assumption of a tragic accident. But some things didn't quite add up. The whispers started almost immediately. Could this seemingly perfect life be hiding a darker truth? Was Suzanne Sills' death a tragic mishap, or something far more sinister? The stage was set for a mystery that would captivate a nation. The truth, as they say, often lies hidden beneath the surface. To the outside world, Suzanne Sills was living the dream. She was a successful businesswoman, a devoted wife, and a loving mother to her 12-year-old twins. She had it all. But on that fateful November morning, her life was cut tragically short. Her sudden death left a void in the lives of those who knew and loved her.
Suzanne was a force of nature, a woman who embraced life with open arms. The thought that such a vibrant soul could be extinguished so abruptly seemed unfathomable.
Friends and family were left reeling, struggling to reconcile the vivacious woman they knew with the grim reality of her demise. As the community mourned the loss of one of their own, whispers of disbelief began to circulate.
Suzanne was incredibly cautious, especially when it came to the stairs in her home. She had often voiced concerns about their steepness, and had even talked about getting them carpeted for added safety.
How could someone so aware of the potential danger fall victim to it? The question lingered in the air, casting a shadow of doubt over the initial assumption of an accident. As the investigation began, one thing became chillingly clear: this was no ordinary fall. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on detectives Eric Hatch and Dave Holloway. They were tasked with untangling a case as tangled as a spider's web. The opulent surroundings of the Sills home did little to ease the tension. If anything, they amplified it.
First impressions can be deceiving. We had to approach this with empathy and professional detachment.
Their gut feeling told them something wasn't right. There were inconsistencies we just couldn't ignore. The detectives meticulously surveyed the scene, their eyes missing nothing. The Sills home, a testament to their success, now felt more like a sterile stage set than a family dwelling. Near Suzanne's body, we found an odd assortment of items: a stainless steel soup pot, a purse, and an empty medication bottle. The soup pot, in particular, piqued their interest. Another unsettling detail emerged. A red and white scarf was found lying near Suzanne's body.
My wife Suzanne had terrible migraines. She needed quiet and darkness to cope. Last night she decided to sleep in our daughter's room because it was the quietest place in the house.
Dr. Sills, his face etched with grief, recounted the events of the previous night. His voice, though laced with sorrow, remained steady, controlled.
I last saw her around midnight. She was asleep on the couch with a stainless steel soup pot on the floor beside her. She often kept it nearby in case she needed to be sick.
His explanation, though plausible, did little to ease the detectives' growing suspicions.
I was awakened by the sound of my children calling for me this morning. I rushed downstairs, my heart pounding, only to find Suzanne lying lifeless at the bottom of the stairs. My grief is immeasurable. I've lost the love of my life, the mother of my children.
The detectives listened intently, their faces betraying nothing. Dr. Sills' story, though tragic, was not entirely convincing. There were gaps in his account, details that didn't quite add up. The detectives, their years of experience having taught them to trust their instincts, knew they were dealing with more than just a grieving husband. They were dealing with a man who was hiding something. The detectives interviewed the Sills children, hoping to gain further insight into the events leading up to Suzanne's death.
I found my mom at the bottom of the stairs. The red and white scarf was wrapped tightly around her neck. I tried to remove it, but I didn't understand what was happening.
Mary Catherine, her voice barely a whisper, described the chilling scene. Her words painted a picture that clashed with the image of a peaceful home.
My parents were arguing the night before. The voices were raised and the tension was unbearable.
Eric's account was equally troubling. His voice trembled as he described the raised voices, the tension that seemed to crackle in the air. His testimony added another layer of complexity to the case. Was this a tragic accident, as Dr. Sills claimed, or was there something more sinister at play? The detectives, their suspicions growing with each passing moment, knew they were running out of time. They needed concrete evidence, something that would either corroborate Dr. Sills' story or expose it for the lie they believed it to be. The pressure was on, and they couldn't afford to make a single mistake. The more the detectives investigated, the more they felt like they were wading through quicksand. Each step forward seemed to pull them deeper into a mire of contradictions and half-truths.
The stainless steel soup pot, it doesn't show any signs of having tumbled down the stairs. No dents, no scratches, it just doesn't add up.
The pot, a seemingly insignificant detail, became a focal point of their investigation. According to Dr. Sills, Suzanne had been carrying it when she fell. Yet the pot itself showed no evidence to support his claim.
And then there's the blood, traces of blood in Mary Catherine's room. It's a mixture of both Suzanne and Dr. Sills' DNA.
When questioned, Dr. Sills seemed evasive, unable to provide a credible explanation for its presence. The detectives were now faced with a chilling possibility. The scene at the bottom of the stairs, the seemingly accidental fall, could have been staged.
Could Dr. Sills have harmed his wife in their daughter's room and then moved her body to make it look like an accident?
The question hung heavy in the air, casting a dark shadow over the investigation. The autopsy report arrived like a bombshell, shattering any lingering doubts the detectives may have had. Suzanne Sills' death was not the result of a tragic accident, as they had been led to believe. It was a homicide. The evidence was irrefutable. The cause of death was ligature strangulation. The red and white scarf found near Suzanne's body, once a seemingly insignificant detail, now took on a sinister significance. It was the murder weapon. The medical examiner also noted signs of blunt force trauma, indicating that Suzanne had been beaten before she was strangled. The report was a game changer. Dr. Sills, once a grieving husband, was now their prime suspect. The inconsistencies in his story, the traces of blood in his daughter's room, the lack of any plausible explanation for Suzanne's injuries, it all pointed to a carefully calculated act of violence. The detectives worked tirelessly, piecing together the fragments of evidence, desperate to understand what could have driven Dr. Sills to commit such a heinous act. They knew that behind the facade of a successful doctor and a loving husband lurked a darkness they were only just beginning to comprehend. In the digital age, secrets are rarely buried deep. Detectives delved into Suzanne Sills' phone and laptop, hoping to unearth the truth. They found a woman trapped in a crumbling marriage. Text messages revealed arguments and desperate pleas for change. Suzanne had been unhappy for quite some time. She confided in friends, expressing her desire to leave Dr. Sills. The digital trail painted a damning picture, revealing a motive for murder. As the investigation progressed, a disturbing portrait of Dr. Sills began to emerge. The charming, charismatic doctor who had captivated patients and colleagues alike was revealed to be a master manipulator, adept at hiding his true nature behind a veneer of respectability. Interviews with former employees of the Sills fertility clinic revealed a workplace rife with fear and intimidation. Dr. Sills, they said, was controlling and verbally abusive, particularly towards Suzanne. He micromanaged every aspect of her life, from her work schedule to her social interactions. Rumors of infidelity swirled around Dr. Sills, whispers of extramarital affairs and a secret life hidden from public view. The detectives, their suspicions growing with each passing day, wondered if Suzanne had uncovered her husband's double life, triggering a violent confrontation that ended in tragedy. The facade of the perfect marriage, the image of the loving husband and devoted father, crumbled under the weight of the evidence. Dr. Sills, the man who had dedicated his life to helping others create families, had destroyed his own. The truth, as they say, will always find a way to surface. And in this case, the truth was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Small-town beginnings. Harriman, Tennessee, seemed a world away from Southern California. Here, Eric Scott Sills spent his formative years. Friends described him as ambitious and kind. Sandy Roberts and Jamie Akins remembered his sharp wit and charm. He was destined for greatness. there was an aura about him. His kindness was as much a part of him as his ambition. He excelled academically, graduating at the top of his class. Accepted to both law and medical school, he chose medicine. Scott Sills, the small-town boy with a heart of gold, was destined to become a healer. A match made and broken in IVF. Dr. Scott Sills' path to professional success led him to the burgeoning field of in vitro fertilization. Susann, a woman of sharp intellect and unwavering determination, had sought Dr. Sills' help in her own quest to become a mother. The woman behind the doctor. Susann Arsuaga was more than just Dr. Scott Sills' wife. She was a force of nature in her own right, a woman who refused to be defined solely by her relationship with a man. When Dr. Sills decided to open his own IVF clinic, it was Susann who stepped up to the plate, taking on the challenge of building a business from scratch. A year after Susann Sills' lifeless body was found, the coroner's report confirmed what detectives had suspected. Suzann's death was no accident. The report stated that the cause of death was ligature strangulation, with signs of blunt force trauma indicating a struggle. Their investigation uncovered a life insurance policy taken out on Susann, suggesting Dr. Sills had much to gain from her untimely death. As the investigation into Susann Sills' murder intensified, a disquieting silence fell over their upscale neighborhood. Neighbors whispered of a marriage in turmoil, heated arguments, and a darkness beneath the Sills' seemingly charmed life. Former employees at the Sills fertility clinic described Dr. Sills as a tyrant, with Susann often the target of his rage. The investigation into Dr. Sills' life took a decisive turn when detectives uncovered a trail of digital breadcrumbs hinting at a double life. Emails, text messages, and social media accounts revealed a web of clandestine relationships. The discovery of Dr. Sills' infidelity sent shockwaves through the community, shattering the carefully crafted image he had spent years building. For nearly 2.5 years, Susann Sills' loved ones waited for justice. Then, in April 2019, Dr. Sills was apprehended, charged with first-degree murder. The prosecution, led by Senior Deputy DA Jennifer Walker, was confident in their case, armed with a mountain of evidence. The trial of Dr. Scott Sills got underway in November 2023. The most compelling testimony came from Mary Catherine Sills, Susann and Scott's daughter, who suggested that Suzann's death was an accident. Her words hung in the air, a mix of sorrow and loyalty to her father. The trial of Dr. Scott Sills was a complex tapestry woven from threads of love, betrayal, and hidden lives. The prosecution presented a compelling case, but the defense skillfully chipped away, raising doubts. The jury deliberated for days, their decision carrying the weight of justice for Susann Sills. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the jury deliberated. The court clerk read the verdict, not guilty. Dr. Sills' children rushed to embrace him, while Suzann's family sat in stunned silence. The not guilty verdict did not erase the questions, the doubts, the nagging sense that something was amiss. The evidence, though circumstantial, had been compelling, but the jury found reasonable doubt. The unanswered questions echoed in the silence left by the trial's conclusion. The saga of Dr. Scott Sills and the mysterious death of his wife, Suzann, served as a chilling reminder that truth is often a matter of perspective. The not guilty verdict did little to dispel the cloud of suspicion that hung over Dr. Sills. The mysterious case of Suzann Sills would forever be a cautionary tale, a reminder that some truths remain forever out of reach.